Welcome back to Think Design Work Smart. I'm Alex Bolboaca and I'm coming at you from the Mozaic Works studios. And for the first video of the year, I thought that instead of doing a serious video and analyze what year 2024 has in for us, how about we start with something fun? And I found a really cool collection of programming memes from 2023. It's a post published by Vladimir Samolovac in August 29, 2023. And let's go look at some of the memes. Well, first one is the typical one, watching programming memes, you programming, right? It has a typo, it should be watching. This reminds me of the fact that I've always wondered who watches Twitch, and I think it's pretty well established now that part of the audience is people who are writing code or compiling in the meantime while listening to Twitch, actually. To streams. Okay, let's see some of the others. How it feels when I fix a bug no one knew I was responsible for. Somebody's congratulating him, but he doesn't know. This is the scene from The Office. How do I feel when I write, modify, and test code, and Baby Yoda, Grogu, have to attend a long meeting and he's kind of down. Yeah. There shouldn't be long meetings anymore, honestly. Why do we still have long meetings? You should be able to split the long meetings into shorter meetings. So in most cases, it's a lack of facilitation. But hey, the range of emotions developers feel every day when code compiles on first try, like an emperor. When code refuses to compile like an imposter. Well, honestly, there's a simple way of dealing with this, and that is even if you have very large code base, and I'm thinking particularly C++, which tends to be very slow in compiling, one thing that is worth doing is set up a separate project or compilation unit, however you can, where you grab just the few files that you need and the dependencies are compiled as a static library or something like that. And then you can easily recompile very often. And when you have this, it just speeds you up considerably. It might take a bit of work and a bit of imagination on how to set things up initially, but really it's extremely good once you get in the hang of it, because the time you spend into the initial step setup will be more than paid off by fast feedback later on. So when it's up to you to fix all code written by others, Bugs Bunny shooting himself in the head. Well, honestly, I kind of like this type of challenge. This is my favorite challenge, but it's not an easy one. And particularly the hardest part is explaining that if you try to do that, it's impossible to estimate how long it will take. I mean, you can, but no estimate will hold. It can be half time, or it can be 10 times, or it can be 20 times longer. It's as it is. So, yeah, I love this kind of challenge because I know the techniques. First write characterization code, characterization tests, and then refactor, or refactor through pure functions, which is a method that we discussed here, and it's quite cool. I think it works really good. Two things developers could be thinking about when you see them like this. My code is not working and I don't know why. My code is working and I don't know why. Well, to be honest, this is where tests and test-driven development and an incremental approach helps, because when I have this kind of problem, basically what I do is at every step the code runs and is tested. And so even if I have a surprise that something is working and I don't know why, I still have the tests. And so most of the times it's like, yeah, okay, something's weird, I don't get it, but no reason to get hung up on it. And my code is not working and I don't know why. That only happens on very small changes, because if you do TDD correctly, you'll probably have about 15-minute cycle. And because of this, you can, if the code doesn't work, the worst thing you can do is to go back to 15 minutes and then take a break and come back and try it again. So, and usually that works. How programmers react to bugs. My code is perfect, must be a compiler bug. IQ score very low. Medium, no, my code is awful, where did I mess up? High IQ, my code is perfect, must be a compiler bug. Oh boy. Really? The only thing you can say here is, look, your code is always awful. Well, not awful, but your code is never as good as you want it to be. And you keep learning, and so your code will never be as good as you want it to be. And that's basically my attitude. Yeah, I'm gonna write stuff that works. I can prove it works with tests, but it doesn't mean that it's the best code that I could write 6 months from now or 1 year from now. Because in the meantime, I've learned new tricks. When you find a critical bug, but you ignore it because it's Friday, users, the app responsible for our literal livelihood and everything is burning. We did it, Patrick. We saved our weekend. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I'm not sure I've ever been in this situation of finding a critical bug on Friday. And part of this is, setting things up so that you find bugs early. It's quite fun. When you look at code you wrote last year, this is from Big Bang Theory, Sheldon. Why? Oh, that's why. This is where my advice, even though I prefer the clean code approach where we minimize comments, and we prefer to write code that expresses itself rather than have comments that try to explain the code. However, there are some major exceptions to this rule, and one of the exceptions is when you need to do a hack in the code because of some weird stuff that's happening with a framework, external service, library, or your own code, or your language, or your, anything in your technology. In that case, you'd write like, okay, I write code without comments, but when I do something that's really weird, I would add, okay, hack. This is the reason for the hack. I don't know how to make it better. This helps alleviate this kind of surprise. And also avoiding people fixing it and then, introducing more bugs. Me reviewing the 5 lines of code I wrote after browsing the internet all day. Magnificent, aren't they? I suspect it will be the same with ChatGPT. Only it won't be browsing the internet, but it will be after I ask ChatGPT. But I imagine my code will look like straight, neat, what it actually looks like. Yeah, we've all been there. It's Code complexity increases in time and it's very difficult to manage complexity. In fact, this is one of the fundamental problems of code. How do you manage complexity? And yeah, there are ways. And once again, test-driven development is a really good way with appropriate refactoring, with good design knowledge and skills. But you might still end up with a mess locally. Only the difference is with TDD, everything is tested. So you can easily go down and improve it once you know how to do it better. When you resume work on code, you started working before going on vacation. This is quite actual. It's some kind of Elvish, I can't read it. This is from Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I get this a lot, particularly since when I write code for various applications, I tend to write code for a while and then I start having customers or trainings and things like that, and then I have to go back after a few weeks, a month or more, and again for a few days to my code. So it's kind of interesting how to optimize this thing. I still haven't figured out precisely how to do it. One thing that I like to do though is to have what I call engineering notes, a kind of a journal where you write the things that you've done on that day and the things that you plan to do. And it's kind of always updated. So I would start with these are the problems that I am hitting and then add updates to those problems. And this kind of helps because then when you go back to particularly to a complex problem, you can look into the journal and say, oh, so this is where we were and this is where I tried. Okay, now let's see. And this is what I wanted to try. That's really good. It takes a few, maybe 15 minutes every day to write, but it's really useful. Developers writing code, developers writing documentation. For some reason, developers hate writing documentation, and honestly, I think it's a pity because the skill of writing documentation is actually very connected with the skill of writing code. So practicing this will make you a better programmer. But this is how things are. When a junior asks their team lead why there are no code comments, we don't do that here. I see. Well, again, I'm not a big fan of commenting everything. Although one thing I would like to experiment with, there's a guy in, which I don't remember his name right now, but he did some studies in information management, and he has a template where basically you'd have on the left side you would have the text, and on the right side you would have annotation on the text. And I'd be really interested, and I wanted to try this, but I never had the time. I'd be really interested in setting up an experiment in which you can not add comments in the code, but kind of add annotations linked to lines of code that are on a side and that you can check. My feeling is that will help a lot, along with a better typography for code, which is something that Peter Hilton is very interested in, and you can search his talks if you want to learn more. When your code is good but it doesn't work, I don't need sleep, I need answers. Yeah, I can imagine this happening, particularly when you do. So I can mentioning TDD, okay. In that case, usually you don't have this problem. But TDD is not really good for designing algorithms. And by designing algorithms, I mean actually, look at complexity, look at how to do it properly, make a mathematical model for it, and so on. So not the what you would understand as a programmer as an algorithm, like I need an algorithm to give me a result for adding prices with various discounts for various things. No, that's a pretty simple one. What I mean is fundamental algorithms, right? And in that case, obviously, I can definitely see this happening. I don't need sleep, I need answers. Flipping through documentation for 10 minutes? No. Hours upon hours of debugging, yes. So here's a hint. Instead of debugging, write tests. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but if once you have tests, so debugging sessions are basically testing sessions that you don't save. If you save the debugging sessions into tests, then you can rerun them later. Now, with this being said, it would be nice to have a kind of replayability for debugging sessions. Think of it as kind of a macros for debugging. Maybe there are such things. And I imagine those can be really powerful because you can retry them. But tests are a more universal solution to this problem, and this is why I favor it. When you realize the code you've been struggling with the entire day doesn't work because you didn't hit compile. I think I've seen this one before, but yeah, this did happen to me often when I was doing C++ programming and I had to, either two projects or one project that you'd have to first build and then run in order to test. And sometimes you'd forget to build it and you'd run the previous version and couldn't tell why it doesn't work. The changes that you've done don't work. And you can get paranoid pretty quickly. It's basically the code gaslighting you. It's pretty funny to see it from outside, but not as funny to experience. When you have to find out why your code has an error, this little maneuver is going to cost us 51 years. Why? Tests. Okay, I'm not gonna say anything more. HR, team building, office parties, no more remote work. Introverted developers are extremely scared. I think there's another one and then I'll comment. What it feels like being a dev at an office party? I wish I were at home playing video games. PR, manager, sales, HR. Yeah, so honestly, most team buildings that I've been at were really, really awful as a developer experience, particularly for me, who I'm also an introvert. And yeah, not the best place to be. And for some reason, HR still imagines that, organizing a kind of a team game will make people work better in teams, whereas it really depends on the style of people. Code retreats, for example, are a pretty good team building exercise. So yeah, you could try that for developers. When you get accused of writing ineligible code, working code is working code. No, that's not enough. You should be able to understand it and be able to change it. Here is why you still need clean code or whatever else you are using, but most likely it will be similar to clean code. When you get promoted to a manager and see what new employees did to your code, let me guess, your code. It was, and it was beautiful. This is fun. Well, one thing you have to remember is that you are not your code. And so if somebody finds a better solution, that's great. And even if the solution doesn't look better to you, if it's better for the team, still great. But it doesn't mean that, yeah, you might occasionally have regrets. When you realize who's responsible for all the bad code you have to deal with, and is the famous Spider-Man double. It's you, obviously. Memes that depict code and its mysterious ways. Worst performance cleaning up code. I'm not sure I get this. When your code suddenly works and you're not sure what fixed it. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Yeah, so you see, this is when I start becoming paranoid. Not when things don't work, but when things start suddenly working. This is when I start to really ask some questions. And typically this is when I will investigate some more. So it's a welcome surprise, but still I'd like to know what happened. When you use annotations to see who wrote the stupid code you are having trouble with, and it's yourself. Oh boy. Compiler telling you there's an error in line 20. Terror turning into hysteria when you realize your code only has 12 lines. All right, this is really good. I love this one. No comment, but I just love it. When your code somehow compiles despite the 9,000 warnings. I love technology. I remember a time, I think it was in Visual Studio, in Visual C++, when the number of errors was limited to, I don't know, probably a power of 2. And, well, let's say 10,000 for the sake of the story. And if you got 10,000 errors, which was possible in C++, because if you're using STL and templates in a weird way, you'll get, for every error, you can get tens, if not at some point, maybe there were even 100 errors for the same small problem. And if you had multiples of these, like let's say you are using list of wrong in multiple places, so you'd get too many errors, and then you'd get an error saying there are too many errors. This was really not helpful. It's a strange fate we should suffer so much fear and doubt over so small a thing, such a little thing, semicolons. Honestly, this is one reason why I'm doing Python now. No semicolons and no curly braces. And I love it. I think we should get rid of semicolons. I think we should start getting rid of curly braces. It's time, folks. Compilers can be smarter than that, really. When you ask a senior how they're able to understand legacy code, I was there when it was written. Yeah. I think this is what you'll see answered a lot. The bigger problem is when you go into a team that is working on a code base that has been started 10, 15 years ago, and everybody who ever worked on it has left, and all the team members are less than 5 years in the project. and probably none of them caught any of the initial team members in the team. And in that case, really, this is the worst situation. It's very hard to recover knowledge. This is one point where I think maybe LLMs might have a great use, recover knowledge from existing code bases. But we'll see. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, Albert Einstein. Meanwhile, machine learning, I'll do it again. No comment. When you receive a runtime error pop-up, it don't mean that. Okay, let's see another one. QA versus devs memes. Test feature or draw 25 developers. I guess they don't want to test feature. I've never played Uno, so I don't know what this meme is about. Fun weekend plans. A developer just closed his last ticket of the day. QA found a critical bug and is stopping the developer. Oh boy. Are there still organizations that need to, work on Saturdays or Friday nights because there's a bug, critical bug found? I mean, I can understand if there's an incident in production, but shouldn't critical bugs be sorted out before they go to production? How often does this happen to you? I'm really curious. Let's skip to a random one. How programmers feel about users? Oh boy. I think this is the category we'll stop on. How designers imagine users who can navigate their interface. Oh my lord. When users report a bug, it works on my machine. You'll fix it so it works on mine too. You'll fix it so it works on mine too, right? I hope with the advent of continuous integration and such a widespread, we don't have this problem anymore. I once worked with in a team in which they hired a new guy who was the husband of somebody who was already in the team. Or no, she was in another team. But basically, we figured out after a while that she was doing his tasks. But one of the things that... Look, now I'm mixing up my story. But basically, there was a problem at one point that we needed to implement uploading a file to web application, and back then it wasn't as easy. So what I discovered she did was that she would copy in the network the file from a location, so just doing a normal file copy, but in the network to the computer hard-coded with her name. And this was incredibly silly because unless you did the code review, which we did, and this is how we caught it, the problem is that it might have worked in any network that had that name of computer inside it, which was really scary. When sales promises impossible to implement feature to clients, Oliver Queen. Sales devs. Oh boy. The Green Arrow. Yeah, I've seen this whole show. I finally found it after 15 years. The scroll of truth. Your feature is not intuitive if user can figure it out. Meh. Yeah, this is what you should take out of this. I think we'll stop here. If somebody cannot modify your code, it's likely that it's your fault when you wrote the code. If somebody can figure out how to understand your code, it's probably your fault when you wrote the code. Unless they are very, very beginner in programming languages, and of course. And the same thing applies to APIs. And the same thing applies to user interface design. But anyway, this has been it for me for the first week of 2024. I hope you had some fun with me. Let me know in the comments if you know other fun memes or jokes or things to make us smile in the beginning of this new year. Thank you kindly for the view, and until next time, remember to think, design, and work smart.